have Ad Astra at Houston Community College, but it is kept by facilities. It's maintained by facilities, and we don't see any of its data. And so I'd like to see what data is produced by Ad Astra and what I could do with it in institutional research so I could convince them that I should have access to their data.
Okay. We may be able to answer that. Another question. Another question?
What are the competing or various data tools that are on the market or will soon be on the market that colleges should be comparing and contrasting?
Okay. Hi. What are the new tools? So technology solutions that are either in the market right now or emerging. You all wouldn't be here this early if you didn't have questions, right? One or two more questions while we finish setting up? So then we're going to do traditional instruction today. We were going to pass on knowledge that we think you need to have. Okay? And so I'm going to turn it over to Lori, who's going to open up the session now that we kind of have our thing up. So gentlemen, if you can join me at the stage, please. And it gets real quiet, right? It only took 4 minutes to do that. That's okay. Yeah. But look at who the smart one was that didn't get on the stage, right? I just think it's a YouTube ready to go viral opportunity.
All right, good afternoon. Thank you for coming to this session on analytics. My name is Laurie Haycock. I'm the Director of Data Services for Achieving the Dream. And today we're going to talk about analytics and the power of data. We all colleges have so much data, and we're starting to realize that it's one of our most valuable assets. But in order to realize it as an asset, we need to unlock that power and push it out of our research offices and into the front lines, into the hands of our academic advisors, our faculty, and our students. So how can we do that? A lot of us use descriptive analytics or even some inferential analytics, but in terms of maturity, we'd like to get to the point where we're using predictive analytics. And there's part of that, there's a technology readiness, and we have a panel of educational technology leaders who represent different segments of that market, and they're going to share with you how you can use technology to leverage the power of your data. So Lizelma Canales is our facilitator today. She's has worked at South Texas College for many years as an ATD lead. She's a data coach with years of experience and has coached several colleges in several different states. And most recently, she became the founding executive director of RGV Focus, which is a large-scale collective impact initiative in a 4-county area in South Texas, whose goal is to increase high school and college graduation rates. And on our panel, we have representatives from Michael Taft, CEO of Zogotech. Raise your hand. Chuck Brodsky, Chief Learning Officer of Full Measure. We have J.D. White of Campus Labs, John Salmon of iDashboards, and Tom Shaver of Ad Astra. And they are going to, well, I'll turn the mic over to Lizelma, but they'll each give you a few minutes about what their company does and what their role is in data and analytics.
So, you guys get to share. There you go. And I get to be selfish and hold one the whole time. And so one of the things that we want to give you an insight to is not particular, like maybe particular tools, but we want to talk to you about what technology solutions are out there, what space they're in, and what student success problems some of these technology solutions can help you address. And so we know that we've got, how many small colleges and rural colleges do we have in the room? Mid-sized colleges? Large systems? So we have the spectrum here, and so we've asked these folks to really think about, to tell you a little bit, 2 minutes, about the technology solution that they have, the problem or the space that they're in, but just to give you a little bit of insight as to what they do help solve in the student success agenda. And so we're hoping to start with Mike. And so Mike, why don't you talk a little bit about what your technology solution is trying to help colleges address as we develop our student success agendas.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Okay. Yeah, I'm going to make this real short. I think they put me on the edge here so that I wouldn't talk too much. I'm a little scared here. So Zovotech, we've been around for about 10 years, and we focus on data analytics for community colleges. We also have some universities, but we really have a passion for community colleges and really believe in what the president of one of our colleges said last night at the award ceremony, is that community colleges are democracy's colleges. And so we really believe in that as a company, and as we consider ourselves a social enterprise, really helping out community colleges in however we can. And we do that through data warehousing and business intelligence. That's kind of a technical term, but it's basically we extract information from all the different data sources on campus and pull it together and then surface it so that the end users can access it and make decisions based on that information. And some of the information that we try to surface out are so that people can do predictive analytics, so they can predict which students are at risk, for example, intervene with them beforehand, track cohorts over time. This is one reason why we're very, very much a fan of what Achieving the Dream is doing, is they're always very focused on longitudinal. So how do we look at information longitudinally, looking at cohorts and so on. And then also looking at how to evaluate the effectiveness of interventions and looking at metrics such as graduation, retention, transfer, and so on. So, what's that? Yeah. I hope they're adding more space and not taking it off. So Phew. All right, I'll pass the mic on.
I am J.D. White. I'm with Campus Labs, and Campus Labs provides a number of different assessment tools to help both in institutional success for IR and IE offices with strategic planning, learning outcomes assessment, accreditation submissions, those types of activities. We also work with student services and student success and student affairs in capturing elements of student engagement in life, both in and outside of the classroom, and capturing a lot of experiential data, the things that students are doing, the offices that they're visiting and going to. And in each one of those touch points that students are having in their experience as they wind through the institution is a data point. And those data points combine with elements from larger transactional-based systems like ERPs, LMSs, can begin to paint a very interesting picture for how you can begin to both document your evidence around student success efforts and kind of goal and achievement components, while at the same time providing new information from that data to the people on the front lines. Like advisors being able to see a more comprehensive record of what a student is engaging in and experiencing throughout the course of their time at the institution. So we really take data and look at it from both kind of the analysis and analytics perspective, and being able to kind of leverage your rubric data from a learning outcome course and your requirements there to actual student participation elements as well. So those things combine into kind of our reporting solution. And we really believe that at the end of the day, data, as you probably have heard, data never retained a student, right? It's only your ability to take that data and do something with it that makes all the difference. And so we want to try, at Campus Labs, we try to take that data and turn it into kind of actionable components for institutions, and increasingly starting to look more at how students can engage in that same type of data use through all of the institutional stores of data that you're capturing on a day-to-day basis.
I think better on my feet. Good afternoon. My name is Charles Brodsky. I'm Chief Learning Officer of Full Measure Education. We're a Washington, D.C. based technology company. We were founded by a lot of the original folks that started two other companies that you may have heard. One is Blackboard, which is a learning management system. The other is another company called Presidium, which is an education service management company. And from the experience that we gathered building both of those companies, we founded Full Measure Education. And what we wake up worried about every day is redesigning communication and customer service in community colleges. And it is an area in which we believe most of the retention and persistence challenges arise in the community college environment. By and large, your faculty members do a great job in the classroom. So student in the classroom with faculty member, things generally go very well. Your faculty members are well trained. Your students can learn. Sometimes they choose not to, but they can. And what we found by examining more than 10 million student interactions and having built Blackboard into a company with thousands of clients, is that what happens outside the classroom is generally where the challenge areas are, all through the education life cycle. So from inquiry to applicant to registrant to persistence from term to term, students getting access to information in a timely manner, getting answers in a timely manner, and being able to connect with you seamlessly so that they can get immediate responses are the things that keep them in school, and if not, they just take a semester off. And of course, as you know, they never come back. And so what we find from an analytics perspective is that analytics are a means to an end. They're not an ends themselves, but by tapping into the data stores that you have in the ERP systems in the back end, sort of in the back warehouses of your data, is a gold mine, right? I love Amazon because when I try to connect to them, they know exactly who I am. Or if I go to Zappos, they know my shoe size, right? Because I've shopped there before. So all of that data, that unique digital fingerprint that each student generates as they move through your system, is very valuable data that can enrich the communication and customer service experience with your students. And we harness that both with technology and with services. So when your student calls on a Sunday at 1:30 with a question, we answer the phone for you. We supply you with a phone number so that when they text you at Tuesday at 1 o'clock in the morning because they just got off a swing shift, we'll be able to answer that question for them. Or if they Facebook or Twitter feed, tweet, I should know that, right? So that when they tweet, we answer for you. So we serve as an extension of your institution to make sure students are getting answers and solutions when they need them. So thank you.
Tom Shaver, founder and CEO of Astra Information Systems. We're both similar and very unique, I think, from the group up here. Similar in so much as we're also an analytics company that pulls data from student information systems, and in our case also degree audit systems. Unique in that we're, from a student success lifecycle perspective, really more focused on the progression and completion part of the life cycle, kind of augmenting the retention strategies that these guys are focused on over here. Specifically, what we're doing in our newer tools is focusing on how do we take the almost 60% of your budget that's allocated to faculty and try to align those resources as closely as possible to students' course needs. The data from our friends at Noel Levitz, represented back there in the back of the room, every single year that they survey students on satisfaction, the number one and number two complaints of students at community colleges are registration related. Number one, the courses I need aren't offered when I'm available because of my work schedule. Number two, the required courses I have aren't available conflict-free. So it's kind of a double whammy. When they can get courses in their time availability slot, let's say they're only available on certain evenings, frequently those courses are scheduled at the exact same time as other required courses. So we spend a lot of energy and a lot of time talking about advising tools and constructing clear pathways to completion, only to find out that when students go to execute on those clear pathways at registration, they can't. And so this is really a way of using data from degree audit systems and from student information systems to project what each individual progressing student is going to need in the upcoming schedule, and then try as much as possible to inform schedule refinements from your rolled forward schedule to make that schedule conflict-free for the students at registration. The side benefit of this is that a student-friendly schedule, by definition, is an efficient schedule. So if you're aligning faculty to your students, by definition, you're going to be rolling out fewer low enrollment offerings and wasting less of that precious instructional capacity that you have. So really that's what we're focused on in this discussion. In addition, we have for years had a room scheduling application and facilities management application, but really in the context of this discussion, the focus is on how do we leverage analytics to build a more student-friendly course schedule.
Hi everybody, I'm John Salmon from iDashboards. iDashboards is a really interesting software. We've been around for about 10 years. They've let me work there for about 5. But everybody's got their strengths. You know, everybody's got their different mousetrap, as you know, we like to say there. But really what iDashboards excels at is giving executives, administrators, board members, parents, something they can quickly pay attention to. If you've seen any of our software before, it's just very easy to navigate and click to be able to drill down using student information system data, Excel spreadsheets, iPads exports, a multitude of different data sources all in one dashboard, so that when it's Sunday night at 10:30 and you've got the provost wants, you know, all these answers to their questions, they can go online and do their own analysis. They don't have to send a request to IR or IT. They can log in and quickly see very easy to consume dashboards. And with alerting modules and what if analysis modules and reporting modules, we've got all kinds of stuff because this dashboard application is all that we focus on. It's all that we do. We're not owned by another company. We're not a big BI stack like a Cognos or anything like that. Typically, we'll get a lot of institutions, specifically community colleges, that don't have the resources that the big 4 years have. So they need to do a lot more with, they're a lot of times under, as you guys know, a lot under more scrutiny than some of the other 4 years maybe. So we give them that tool that they don't have to program or code. You don't need IT developers to do any of this stuff. We train anyone with a basic foundation in, let's say, Excel to use our right-click menu to build dashboards on whatever data you have. So there's a lot of common implementations that we see from time to time, but really the biggest impacts that we're seeing is from an institution. Everybody's got their strategic plan. Well, what are you doing with it? Some people just get it done to have it done, and then it sits there. Other institutions are using iDashboards to really hold people accountable and to put action items in place so that if we're not meeting certain thresholds, okay, here's what we do next. And it's done in a very consumable format. Thanks.
So in Achieving the Dream, we talk about moving into, and I love the way Dave said it this morning, not about decision, you know, using data to make decisions, but about using data to do, to inform decisions and inform dialogue. And so, Tom, you kind of got us started in the idea of where in the student, you know, those of you who are keeping up with the completion by design work, we now talk about students going through a process of connection. So how we connect with students, to entry, how do they enter our system, and what are some of those momentum loss points where we lose our students, and then progression, how do we know that our students are progressing so that they're meeting their goals and their objectives within their program of study, and then completion. And then I would add the whole workforce side of it, you know, when they get to the job, which is really their goal. And so from that perspective, in that life cycle, the student success life cycle, we talk about, you know, decision making or informed decisions based on data at the institution level and then at the student level. So say a little bit about how we can leverage technology solutions, and I'll get started with Mike over here. How do we leverage technology solutions from both the institutional perspective, but then also not forget that we as an institution can make as many decisions as we want to, but how do we also help the students? And in what space, you know, does the technology solution that you provide kind of help with that?
So our company, we're very data hungry. So we're always looking at whatever data that we can pull into our warehouse that will help better predict student success. And so that may be information, obviously from the student information system, from Banner and Colleague and so on, but it could also be from the National Student Clearinghouse and even high school data and so on. So anything that will help predict all of the things that Lusama mentioned in terms of how students are moving through gateway courses, how they're making it through momentum points and so on, are very important for us. And so we're looking at what kinds of information that we can pull in to better predict that.
So we've got like institutions that may not have, maybe one FTE in IT, maybe no FTEs in IR. So, I mean, how does someone who doesn't have the ability to move that work forward, because to me, I mean, if you've got a business process, unless you have a really good business process, you're not going to be able to get anything out of a technology solution. And so I'm going to move on to, let's see, JD. So JD, as we look at the student progression, the life cycle of the students, where is it that your technology solution, like what problem is being solved by that, and when we go from connection to entry to progress and completion?
Yeah, I would say we're probably primarily in the kind of progress standpoint. We do a lot of data capture within our tools. And that data that we're capturing, I'd like to tell you it was big data in the kind of traditional sense, because that's just a term I love to throw around, right? But it really is actually very small, right? We capture a lot of points in time that students are leaving breadcrumbs of their experience that oftentimes the institution isn't gobbling up, because they are things like, again, you go into an office and swipe a card, for example, for an appointment. That's a very small data point in time, but you put those data points together and you can begin to see signal and noise start to kind of separate themselves, because it's the additive components. It's not just the courses that students take that make them successful, it's the experiences that they have within those courses, through those courses, and across their kind of time frame. So we try to gobble up as much of that information as we possibly can to help begin to identify patterns and opportunities for institutions to respond to that data. I think the question of business processes that you were referring to, I think one of the things that we have found successful is to make the tools do your process. Instead of thinking about having to reconstruct every process and re-engineer it for a technology, as I'm sure many of you would kind of agree, getting your faculty members to do the thing that they've done for a really long time differently is probably, tilting at windmills, right? Like you've got better things to do and more that you can extract from them. If there's a way that you can actually capture the things that they're doing on a day-to-day basis and then leverage those data points for your information. It's a difficult process. It's not easy. On some days I wish we were re-engineering business processes, because it means flexibility in tools. It means conversations. One of the things that we do with that is each one of the campuses that we work with has a dedicated either success or assessment consultant who works with them to kind of craft together that strategy of how to implement the tools, how to begin to work with those things. So the places that may have low, FTEs for things like RIE can still benefit from the processes necessary to kind of capture and leverage that information. And I think that's where kind of we see the kind of current state of affairs from an administrative side. I think the student side of that question is fascinating, and if you asked me, that is the next undiscovered wave of information, which is how do we utilize all that same information in different ways to students? Because if your fellow administrators don't want to look at an average on a screen and make sense out of that, you can place a hefty bet that your students aren't going to want to do that either, right? And so we have to think differently about how we approach that, and I think that's going to be a different spin on consumer education and how we drive technologies to help support their consumption of those kind of critical elements.
I'm actually going to pass it over to Tom, because it is a nice segue for the same thing, because you began the discussion on this space. So say a little bit more about that.
In terms of life cycle,
Yes.
because I jumped ahead.
That's okay.
Okay. I think, the reason, and I brought up the question when we were kind of planning, the reason I thought it would be interesting to talk about stages in the life cycle is that I feel like as an industry, I've kind of watched us as an industry get a lot better at access, and then I've watched us as an industry be really, really focused on retention and get a lot better at retention, and I still think we're making progress there. I feel like for us at least, we're trying to fill a void near the end of the life cycle, and really near the end of the kind of the cycle a student goes through every academic term. And the point is, I think all of these things need to play nicely together. And I've heard frequently people say that once they dig into this, how complex these things are, and that there isn't a single silver bullet. And I would completely agree. What we do is irrelevant if the student isn't engaged, right? What we do is irrelevant if the student isn't advised to take the right stuff. But all of that stuff becomes irrelevant, relatively speaking, if the student shows up with this great game plan at registration and can only get 2 of the 5 courses they need to make progress, and then they're left with 2 really bad alternatives: take some fluff classes that lead to unproductive credits, or maybe be below a threshold to get financial aid. And so, I think life cycle wise, it's good to keep all these things in mind in terms of all playing nicely together.
Something that came up when we were planning this morning, I think, that kind of resonated with me was, yeah, we can, how many of us are working on improving the student experience? All of us, right? So we're working really, 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 really hard to improve the student experience, and then we kind of blame the advisors. It must be those advisors when the student doesn't enroll in the right courses. And so it was really interesting to look at, from a technology solutions perspective, is, yeah, you can design the perfect student experience. However, if the courses are not there, it's still an advising issue, right? And so how do you traditionally get, facilities and others to kind of play nice and to understand that that's their connection to student success? And so this is rethinking fundamentally the student experience.
Yeah, and in our world, we're kind of trying to stick our toe into the pool that everybody's really afraid of in this industry, which is the autonomous faculty academic units, right? Where we've got this for good reason. We have a culture built up in our industry of academic freedom, where you have at even relatively small schools a lot of disparate academic units that operate in material autonomy. They build their own schedules. You do a roll forward schedule. They refine the schedules in their little subset. It all gets kind of mushed together with very little coordination between the academic units, and then we kind of let the students fend for themselves and open registration. We don't feel like the solution is to centralize everything and become draconian. But we do feel like, from an analytics standpoint, and back to your question about how to leverage that in our world, it's to provide those data points to the faculty and show the student impact and show the wasted resources. Another really interesting aspect is that we've found that academic units are really interested in looking good to their peers and other academic units. So when it's illustrated that 3 academic units are being heavily subsidized by the other academic units that are efficiently managing their faculty resources, it becomes an eye-opener, and it kind of corrects itself too. So that's another interesting way to kind of dive into that.
So we'll move over to Chuck and talk about, from a communication and customer service perspective, how are technology solutions being leveraged to kind of help us understand the student experience from connection to completion?
Yeah, it's a good question. We think about that a lot. I think it's probably safe to say that we can all assume, literally from inquiry sort of to graduate, as a group, we're sort of outmanned. There's thousands and thousands of them, and in our registration office there's 6 of us, and we have a part-time student that helps sometimes, right? Or in the financial aid office there's 7 of us, but there's 12,000 of them, right, trying to kind of get to us. And so from a customer service perspective, it's a complete imbalance. And what we're beginning to see now is a transformation in the way in which people think about the value of their data. I think it's safe to say for a very long time, IT managers and folks that manage data, there was a young woman here you talked about, I can't even get to my data to know what my data is, right? People are starting to rethink that. The reason they're starting to rethink that is because of the experiences they're having in other industries, right? So I can deposit a check on my cell phone. I can one-touch buy on Amazon. FedEx sends me a text when my package arrives. Now, I can tell you that FedEx hasn't quintupled the number of customer service agents they have, even though their business has, right? They've just been smarter about the way they deploy their data and aim it at their clients. So from a customer service perspective, we can automate much of the administrative processes that happens and actually free up the time of the 7 people in our financial aid office to do the things they were hired to do: package financial aid, be smart about financial aid, get students in the right packages. But we're inundated by interrupt-driven work. So for all of you that work in an office like that, the phone will ring, it'll be a question that has nothing to do with you, you got to find the person to transfer to, and you've just taken your eye off the job. So we're starting to see now 2 things happen: the will at the provost, president, executive levels to bring people together into retention committees to talk about these concepts and begin, unfortunately for you, this hasn't happened yet, but to begin to free the data a little bit, right? To get access to the data to make things happen. But then also on the technology side, the proliferation of smartphones and devices, they're everywhere, right? So you go on campus on Monday, everybody's looking down, right? Even if they're sitting at a table together, everybody's got their head down like this. And they're not talking, they're texting, right? They're sending messages back and forth. I have a 26-year-old nephew. I can't get him to call me, right? All he wants to do is text. And so we have to be able to meet students in the medium that they would choose to communicate with us as part of the customer service delivery and to automate that. And then once that happens, we'll be able to service people at a much higher level. You'll see persistence and retention rates dramatically increase, and that will free your time up to do the things that you were all sort of hired to do on your own key performance indicators.
So I was really proud that 3 years ago I began to Facebook as in verb, right? And so my daughter says, but Mom, none of us are Facebooking anymore. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, at least the friends, my friends my age will be Facebooking with me. I don't have to find out what the rest of you are doing. And so that being said, so we talked about how do you put things in the hands of the user. And so we traditionally work in an environment, I don't know why we think that data is sacred. I heard earlier, my registrar will not allow me to use his data. Really? I thought it was the student's data. I thought it belonged to the institution. And so what are some of the technology solutions, using dashboard types? And you and I had a conversation on where do you see in the spectrum of the student success life cycle, putting that kind of data in front of either institutions, community, parents, students. Where in the life cycle does that lie?
It's probably, as we spoke, it's probably a few of those things there.
Yeah.
We don't just deliver software. We come on campus and train your people on how to use it and also talk about strategy, especially when you roll out something as scary as transparency amongst faculty or other administrators. There's some sensitivity that needs to come to play. So for us, there's a huge culture shift that needs to happen a lot of times for something as easy as we like to claim, well, our software, our dashboards are so easy. Well, the dashboards are easy. It's the culture shift that people really struggle with. So we want to have this infrastructure of dashboards built to get the data into the hands of the people that need to make decisions because they're used to having antiquated tools to try to make quick decisions off of, whether it's just spreadsheets or exports or just clunky tools that just makes it hard. So there's this big status quo that's been going on for a long time for you need the right leadership that's forward-thinking enough to embrace technology, like some of my counterparts up here, to be able to incorporate new technology to then better make those decisions in a faster time frame, and that they don't have to rely on other people. They don't have to hire more people that nobody's got headcount approved to do anyway. So back to where iDashboards would fit in that lifespan. It's like, well, it's a monitoring, it's a monitoring tool where you can check to see where any student is progressing. There's one of our customers in Minnesota. They've got this early intervention alerting system with our software. So when the associate dean logs in, it's a program that they've got 20 some odd competencies. Well, at any given time, the associate dean's going to log into her dashboard and then see who's falling short, and also have some alerts fire so that they can pull in the student, have the sit down to say, okay, well, what's going on? As opposed to the previous way of having spreadsheets at the 11th hour and there's nothing left to do. So having that culture come on board with adopting new and scary technology for people that sometimes just want to ride out until they hit retirement, it's an interesting struggle that at our company we face, because it's like, well, the dashboards are easy. Getting people on board to the idea, that's the kid gloves part. That's a sensitive thing where we have to roll out slowly.
I was just going to append, one of the things that we're beginning to see, with the proliferation of great dashboards like iDashboard and others, and companies like Starfish that are generating alerts and sort of messages that say, hey, student A is in trouble, or student B didn't do something. One of the challenges we're beginning to see is just pure information overload. If you're a school like with 4,000 or 5,000 students or 6,000 students, and you're getting 200 alerts a week, right? And all of a sudden 4 weeks goes by, now there's 800 alerts going to a professor or two, and just all of a sudden they don't even know what to do with them all. So I would just counsel that having the alert, it's great, right? But something's got to happen on the other end. And what we've seen happen is that sometimes the folks that get those alerts, like faculty members, they just don't do anything with them because they're just literally awash in that kind of data.
And so when we set up the panel and we talked this morning, I said, oh, well, we'll do all the discussion, and at the end we'll open it up for questions, but I never follow the rules, even when I set them up. And so on a scale to 1 to 5, on a scale of 1 to 5, someone talked about culture, and your culture has to be ready. I think it was you, John, to do this. And so from a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being, we would be really lucky to begin to have the conversation about how to use technology solutions to improve the student experience, to 5 being, we're right at the cutting edge of using these tools, with 3 being, we've got the tools, but nobody lets us use them. So let me see the 5s, the overachievers that you think you're already doing a fantastic job of leveraging technology solutions. Should I skip 4 and go to 3, or do we have some 4s? Okay, we've got a couple of 4s. So tell me why you're a 4.
Well, we have Zogotech.
But what is it beyond having the technology solution? How is it that you're using that for what decisions, and who actually is making decisions off of it?
We're still in the beginning process. We've had it for about a year now, but as the QEP director for SACS, our QEP is mandatory orientation, and so now we have that set up in Zogotech as one of our drop-down reason codes, so we can mark attendance in there. We know who's truly attended the orientation, and we have 3 different modalities of it, face-to-face, My Cougar Day, or online, so we have all that separated. And then with that, we'll be able to pull that and break that down too, to see how they, how did those students do because of the different forms of orientation. And we're just now kind of starting that part of it. Faculty advising, though, is another part of the QEP, and they have to go in there and they have to log in all their contacts. And so we're following up, and we're making sure those contacts, not only, I know that they're making them, but they're not always documenting them. And so the faculty's kind of getting their hands slapped a little bit, and they're being gotten, which is not good. They asked for this. They wanted us to have more communications between students and faculty. So it's working. We're in the beginning stages, but we've got it, and it's going, and I see the light at the tunnel.
All right, I saw another 4.
We're a 4.
Okay.
I just don't have Ad Astra's data.
So I'm listening to these guys, and I'm hearing, no offense to anyone up there, I know that's kind of a tough deal, but I'm hearing industry speak. And I think one of the things that's been important to us is that I feel like we're doing real stuff with this stuff, which pinpoints students. And so what's been helpful for us is to chop stuff up into manageable bits and give it to advisors and counselors and give it to instructors and say, here's this group that if you do these things with, you'll make a difference. So we have tried to embrace what ATD says, let's get people through the pipeline, and now we're embracing what the state of Texas is going to fund us on, which is 15 credit hours and 30 credit hours and you know, all those check marks. And we have a metric for each student as to how they're moving across time, and we have things we're doing to help move that. And so that's how the data informs us, and that's, you know, the rubber hits the road. So we've seen great improvement in not just retention, but how they're moving through those.
I'm a 3.5. I'm not a 4. Not a 4. No, and actually, I want to kind of echo some of the things. I'm also we're working with Zogotech, and it has worked out